Good evening. Let's start with our motivation. So we've just spent the whole day running around looking for pleasure, seeing what we can get happiness from, and protecting ourselves from anything unpleasant. So making sure we defend ourselves against even the slightest hint of criticism or disapproval. Declaring ourselves to be beyond that. And instead just seeking to give the self whatever it thinks will make it happy. And in the process of doing that, creating a lot of non-virtue through body, speech, and mind. And even though we have high principles and high values, these defilements make it very difficult for us to live according to our principles and values as much as we really want to and aspire to. So it's very important to notice the self-centered thought, the self-grasping ignorance, and how they self-sabotage us. And then apply the antidotes to them so that we can really become the kind of person that we want to be. So with that aspiration to do that for the benefit of all beings, no matter whether we like them or don't, or agree with them or don't agree with them, to really dedicate our lives to repaying the kindness of others and develop our wisdom and compassion instead of our fear and attachment, so that we can really be of great benefit to living beings. And so let's listen to the teachings tonight to learn how to do that. So we often find ourselves afraid of different things. When we react against whoever we see as authority, or when we react against whatever we label as criticism, because the person hasn't bowed to us 3 times before they gave us feedback. Then we get really stuck in fear. It's so interesting to watch the mind, just as, somebody says something in the environment, or we face some new situation, and the mind just goes, kind of like how when you hit your knee, it automatically knee-jerk reaction, yeah. So just knee-jerk reaction. We get afraid, we get anxious, and it's interesting to stop at those times, to notice when the mind's gotten afraid and when we're about to defend ourselves or attack back or whatever. And just stop and look at the fear and ask ourselves, what am I afraid of? Yeah, just ask an open-ended question, I'm afraid. What am I afraid of? Yeah, it's quite interesting, And it's usually, I'm afraid of pain. Or, that's the usual thing. Because we say, I'm afraid so-and-so is going to do this or so-and-so is going to do that. But it actually boils down to, I'm afraid of pain. And then to ask ourselves, well, how do I know I'm going to experience pain if this situation happens? Yeah. Instead of saying, for sure I'm going to be unhappy and in pain, just to say, how do I know that? Yeah. And then to be able to watch and see how much our mind creates pain for ourselves. Yeah. By the way we think. Mm-hmm. We're going to get into that a little bit in the teaching, how we create pleasure for ourselves by the conceptual process, but also how we create pain. Yeah. And a lot of it's really unnecessary. If we just say, well, what am I afraid of? And it's like, sometimes we don't even know. Or sometimes we can isolate what it is, but it's like, it hasn't happened yet, so why am I so afraid? Yeah. And how likely is it to happen? And even if it did happen, is it really the end of the universe? Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, working with the wasp is a good example. When they fly around, we had one person here earlier in the summer, and when a wasp would come near, she just totally freaked out. Jumped up and screamed and ran away, and of course the wasp chased her. Yeah, but it is kind of a knee-jerk reaction. If you hear them, buzzing, or you see one on your arm, it's like, ah. But to actually stop and say, yeah, well, what am I afraid of? Oh, they're going to bite me. Well, yeah, then. Well, it's going to hurt. But I don't know about you. For me, the emotion of fear is much more uncomfortable than the actual pain I experience in situations. I don't know if it's that way for you or not. Yeah, but the emotion of fear is so suffering that to see if actual pain from the situation would be nearly as bad as I'm afraid of it being. I mean, I've gotten bitten a few times this summer, and yes, it hurts, and my hand swells up, and life goes on. Whereas in that moment, when the wasp is there and I can see it on my hand, it's like, ah! I don't run away, but it's like, shake it off and then run. But of course it follows you. They say don't run, but that's so counterintuitive. You did that once, didn't you? You stepped on a wasp nest and then you just stood there and they all went away. Yeah. One bit. One bit, yeah, but not. Mm.
That was fun.
Yeah. So, yeah, but just to look at how our fear operates and how our mind helps to create it. Mm. Quite interesting. So our mind creates some fear, and then sometimes we experience fear also as a karmic result of ill will and malice. So in our mind, when we develop a lot of malice and ill will towards other people, the karmic result of that non-virtuous action can be having a lot of fear and suspicion of other people. Yes, our mind, the creator of drama. I was remarking to somebody the other day that in the Chan tradition, when they talk about the sixth patriarch, he was illiterate, but he was a great sage, and a great practitioner. And I always wondered that, how can somebody who's uneducated really be a great practitioner? Don't you need some education to understand the teachings and, at least be able to read the sutras, to understand them and contemplate them? So it always kind of puzzled me. And then I began to observe different people. And sometimes the people who are the most educated are the ones who create the most worry and doubt in their own mind. Yeah? They, the education makes, they have, yes, good conceptual ability to analyze, but they often analyze the wrong thing. And then, just dream up all sorts of hindrances that don't even exist. So it's interesting how that works. Yeah? The conceptual ability, education being used for creating misery. Yeah? Do any of you see that in yourselves? Yeah? They taught us to think, but we didn't always learn how to discern what is virtuous and what's non-virtuous before we thought. Instead we, just conceptualization. What if this happens? What if that happens? How do I know if I'm doing the right thing? How do I know if I'm doing the wrong thing? Maybe this is good. Maybe this is bad. Can I do it for a while and then turn the time machine back and do something else for a while and then turn it back again? And then after 15 years of trying all the 32 flavors, then make up my mind which one is really good. But even that, after I've tried all of them, since I tried some of them earlier on, maybe now I'm still going to be unsure whether it's the right way or the wrong way. And what happens if it's the right way now, but 2 years down the line, then I'm not unhappy? Is being unhappy the right criteria for not pursuing that? Or should I be unhappy? Should I be happy? How do I know I'm doing the right thing? This is so confusing. Somebody please tell me what to do. Somebody tells you what to do. Why are you telling me what to do? I want to make my own decision. I'm an intelligent person. Get off my case and stop bossing me around. Amazing how our mind works, isn't it? Amazing. Shall we go back to the king and his problems? Okay. Okay, so we've been talking here about, how the king should govern, and, we talked about how to appoint different officials and how to treat the inmates in prison with kindness, with compassion, and then how to send agents out throughout the land to see what's going on, so that you know what's happening in different places, and you can help the people accordingly. So it's not that you know what's going on in different places and you can defend yourself accordingly. It's so that you can help the people accordingly. Okay, and so in 339, Nagarjuna said, through extensive and suitable generosity, respect, and service. Devote yourself always to those who are the foundation of good qualities. Do the same for the rest as is appropriate. Okay, so the Sangha is the foundation of good qualities. So with generosity, respect, and service, relate to them. And then do the same also for other sentient beings as is appropriate. In other words, don't save your generosity, respect, and service simply for the monastics, but spread it throughout your kingdom to all of the citizens of the kingdom. Okay, then Nagarjuna gives an example here. If the tree of kingship offers the shade of tolerance, the open flowers of respect, and the great fruit of generosity, then the birds, your subjects, will flock to it. A munificent but magnificent king will be beloved like sugar candy with a hard crust made from cardamom and black pepper. If you reign properly in this way, your kingdom will not be chaotic. It will not proceed improperly nor contradict the Dharma, but will be in harmony with the Dharma. Okay, so here the kingship, or the king is kind of like a very big fruit tree, and his tolerance is similar to the shade of the tree, with flowers, open flowers of the king's respect all around. And because of that, then all the birds come and enjoy the flowers, they enjoy the shade of the tree and the beauty of the tree. And so similarly, his subjects will be able to come and they will feel comfortable under his rule because it offers tolerance and respect and generosity. Okay? And so when the king is tolerant and respectful and generous, then the subjects all respond by respecting and trusting him in turn. Yeah, it makes sense, doesn't it? If the king pulls a big power trip and is not very tolerant of their subjects and their foibles and wants certain people to be their subjects and get rid of the rest and wants everybody to honor him instead of, the king or the monarch honoring the citizens, then there's just going to be a lot of chaos and disharmony in the society. So they always say, and even in business models, the little I'm familiar with that, is that how the people at the top relate to each other filters down into how the people in the lower ranks relate to each other. And if the top people treat each other well and are respectful and tolerant and generous, then it filters down through the entire organization. When I was in Singapore last year, I visited a Buddhist center where I've gone many times. I really like the people there. But the center was divided this year. They were divided into two groups that were hostile to each other. And the reason was that each group was supporting a different monk, and the two monks did not get along. Yeah, there had been a split in that Sangha. The two monks didn't get along, and even though neither one of them lived in Singapore, that filtered down into the group so that the group itself was disharmonious. It was really quite sad, because the year before I had been there, and I love all the people there, and they had all been friends. And then last year when I went, I had to have lunch with this group because that one group wouldn't come, and then I had lunch with this group because, they wouldn't join each other. And I think it was because higher up didn't get along. Okay. So then somebody asked, well, does the monarch always need to be tolerant? Yeah. And Nagarjuna says, well, yes, in general, he or she should be tolerant. I always have to add she now. Yeah, we might have a female monarch, you know. Well, precedent. Yeah, oh, we do have female yeah, Queen Elizabeth. Yeah, she gives a good visualization to people, doesn't she? Much better than her children do. Huh? Yeah. Yeah, that's right. People really respected Queen Mary too, yeah. Okay. Yeah, maybe we should ask them to come and yeah. I often visualize Angela Merkel coming, and she's good too, isn't she? Yeah. Huh? Yeah, well, that's because they're stupid. You see, I'm very tolerant. And I'm always been right in my judgment of other people. So make sure you agree with me if you know what's good for you. Okay, so so in general, the king should be tolerant and pleasant, but upon occasion, sometimes he needs to be fierce. So when he or she sees something that's going on in the kingdom that is not suitable, that's harmful, that's damaging and destructive, then for the benefit of the people, the monarch needs to speak out and set the situation right. Okay? And so sometimes, that involves speaking very strongly in one way or another. And when the monarch does that, then because he's working for the good of the people, then the people see his power and they know it's protecting them and they respect the monarch even more. Okay? Because they can rely on the monarch to protect them. Whereas if the monarch is whimsical, capricious, immature, and childish, then the society's not going to work very well. So the king has to be like a delicious candy that's soft on the inside, but the outside is hard and rough. So there seems like there must have been some kind of candy in ancient India that was very sweet on the inside, but it's made of cardamom and pepper that is somehow forms a hard crust on the outside. Yeah. And and so often the ruler needs to be like that, to present a strong face publicly, but to be able to listen with compassion when different subjects come with their troubles and problems. Yeah. And be soft inside and respond to their needs. Okay. And so if you reign like this, the kingdom will not be chaotic, and you'll be able to reign in accord with the Dharma, and the kingdom will be in accord with the Dharma. Okay, then 343. He says again now to the monarch, "You have not brought your kingdom with you from the previous life, nor will you bring it to the next. You obtained it through Dharma, so it is not right to violate Dharma for its sake. King, through your efforts, see to it that you do not end up perpetuating the stockpiling of suffering through your kingship's stockpiles. King, through your efforts, see to it that you manage to perpetrate your stockpiling of kingship through your kingship's stockpiles. To perpetuate your stockpiling of, what did I say? Perpetuate your stockpiling of kingship through your kingship stockpiles. Okay, so the first verse, he reminds the king, that this kingdom is not inherently your possession. Yeah, you didn't bring it with you from your previous life. And it's going to stay here, and you're going to go on to your next life without it. Yeah, so you're the king, you're in that position. The kingdom, quote, quote, belongs to you, but only for a short while. And in addition, why did it come to be your possession? You obtained it through the Dharma. In other words, through the king's virtuous actions in a previous life, he created the cause to have the wealth, have the power, receive the respect that he's receiving from being king in this life. In other words, all these things are not inherently his. It's not that he himself is so grand and deserves the riches and honor, but all of these things are conditioned phenomena that came his way due to causes and conditions that he himself created in previous lives. Yeah. So when you think like that, then when you have wealth or intelligence or power or whatever, you don't get arrogant and conceited about it, because you realize that you have it simply because of causes and conditions created in the past. And when those causes and conditions cease, it's no longer going to be yours. Okay? So since, and Nagarjuna is saying to the monarch, how did you create virtuous causes and conditions to receive the power and the wealth and the esteem that you have now? It was through your Dharma practice. It's through the practice of virtue. You didn't get these good results from practicing non-virtue. You got at them from practicing virtue. So that's the practice of the Dharma. Okay? So, because you received all of this through Dharma, it's not proper to violate the Dharma in order to protect it or perpetuate it. Okay? You getting what I'm saying? So then he goes on to say to the king, through your efforts in governing the kingdom, don't create a lot of negative karma by being arrogant and conceited and greedy and angry and, disrespectful. Because if you do that, all you're going to do is stockpile the causes for more suffering for yourself in the future. So see to it that through your efforts, because you have all these things of this life, that you use those things properly, and through generosity, you create a lot of merit, and through governing the kingdom properly, you create a lot of merit, so that you stockpile virtue because you have these things, instead of using all of this stuff just to create more and more causes for suffering for yourself. So if we look in, in society, some of the people who have wealth and power nowadays use it wisely and with kindness and with generosity. And some people who have wealth and power make a mess, and stir up messes and create disharmony. So each person, according to their actions in this life, they're using their wealth and power. One is using it to create the causes of happiness in the future. The other is using it to create the causes for their own suffering in the future. Both of them received their present good fortune from practicing virtue in the past. Yeah. But when you don't realize that, you don't appreciate your good fortune, and you don't see the interdependence with other people, then so many people who have good status and wealth and so on in this life just create, an incredible amount of negative karma. I mean, horrendous negative karma. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They violate the Dharma, but that's pretty. Like then, Dharma means something like positive change of mind, right?
Dharma means many different things.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I was never thinking like that. That when we have positive karma, whatever whatever it is, material or positive qualities within ourselves, that is due to having done good deeds in previous life, and that we can, also say, okay, that's part of the Dharma, keeping ethical conduct and such, and if you don't use that in a good way, then you destroy the Dharma.
Then you what? You
destroy the Dharma.
Yeah. And you destroy the Dharma in yourself, just even the foundation of ethical discipline. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, So I think this understanding of past and future lives really helps us to be very present in this life and make sure that we live in a good way in this life. Yeah? So we don't get conceited over our opportunities and our talents, because they're just conditioned phenomena, and which means they're not going to last forever. And we realize that if we want good conditions in the future, we have to use our good conditions now in accordance with the Dharma to create the causes for that. Yeah. Otherwise, you have a lot of wealth, a lot of power this life. Yeah. When you die, they have huge funerals for you. Millions of people turn out crying, sobbing because they love you so much. But you're already reborn in the hell realm. Yeah? So we can't evaluate things just on the way they appear in this life, because some people who are so famous and lauded in this life, created tremendous non-virtue, and while everybody's sobbing because they died, they're already in the hell realm. So, getting arrogant over worldly status is really stupid. Isn't it? Over worldly status, worldly wealth, really stupid. And you really see this through the Buddha's life. What did the Buddha do? I mean, he had the opportunity to have all of that, and he saw it as danger, and he split. And, Ratapala, what was his whole teaching was about? Seeing all of that as danger, and he gave it up. Okay. So now we're going to move into another section, kind of slight change of topic, and talk about the emptiness of pain and pleasure. Okay, so we all want happiness, none of us want suffering, but we don't realize the illusory nature of happiness and suffering. We see happiness as inherently existent. We cling to it. We see suffering as inherently existent, and we, push it away. we create a lot of mental suffering on top of the physical suffering that we already have. Okay? And a lot of our suffering is created through our greed for pleasure. Because when we're really stuck on pleasure, we run around trying to get this, trying to get that, all in an attempt to feel good about ourselves or get what we want or whatever. Okay? And so we live our lives with a lot of craving for pleasure and fear of pain. And that doesn't make for a very happy life. Okay, so it's very important that we really look at what pleasure and happiness are and understand them properly so that, we can gauge our actions in accordance with that understanding. Yeah. Because often now, when you look at it, when we think of pleasure or happiness, we kind of feel like it's out there in the situation or in the object that makes us happy. Yeah? Like if I look at this beautiful mandala, I feel happy when I look at it because it's so beautiful. Why? Because it has beauty and happiness inside of itself. Seems like that, doesn't it? Yeah? And if I look and, this is some delicious nectar or something, and it's so fantastic, well, that's because it has happiness and pleasure in it. Isn't that kind of the way we look at it? Yeah? And when you're in love with somebody, doesn't that person have happiness inside of them? And so just by your being near them, you catch some of that happiness. It's like a virus, but a good virus, and you get it from the, we say, I'm so happy when I'm with you. Yeah, because you have happiness, and by being close to you, the happiness that's in you, comes into me. That's the way we look at it, isn't it? The happiness is there in the person. Why do we want to go to the beach? Because there's happiness at the beach. Isn't there? It's happiness. Lie in the sun, get sunburned. There's happiness. Okay, so that's how we look at things. But is there actually happiness in those objects? Yeah, when you eat chocolate cake, we love chocolate. Is there happiness in the chocolate? It sure seems that way, doesn't it? Yeah. But if there were happiness in the chocolate, then every time we ate chocolate, no matter under what circumstance, we would feel pleasure because the happiness inside the chocolate would go inside of us. Okay. If you just overate in a meal and you had chocolate, would you still feel happiness? If you had the flu and you were throwing up, would chocolate give you happiness? Okay? So if the happiness were inside the chocolate, it always should give us the pleasure. But it doesn't. Pleasure depends not just on one object, but on a whole constellation of circumstances. Mm-hmm. So the pleasure is not inherently existent, and it's not inside the object that we think gives us pleasure. It's really interesting, because we get attached to people and we get attached to things and situations because we think that they are the happiness. Actually, what we're seeking is the happy feeling. The person, the object, the situation is not that happy feeling. So we even get our objects of attachment confused. Isn't it? Because we're actually attached to the pleasure. But I think because there's pleasure in this, then I'm attached to this. But actually, there's no pleasure in this. Because if there were, it would always bring me pleasure, and it doesn't. Okay? But we get attached to the object that we think brings us pleasure, and then we run after those objects. We desperately need them. And when I say object here, it could be a person, you know? It's some person that we are just madly in love with, you know, because it looks perfect. Finally, they showed up on their white horse. Did I tell you when I was where was I? In Southern California a few weeks ago, there was an Indian wedding at the Hilton Hotel, where our Buddhist retreat was. And the family hired a white horse, and his hooves were decorated with gold stuff, and his mane was braided, and he was a decked out white horse that the groom rode, you know, as he approached the bride for the wedding, you know? Yeah, so, you know, my husband didn't do that when I got married. I feel cheated, you know? So, okay, but we look at these things, it's like, that's what brings me happiness. It's out there, yeah? But it's not that actual thing that we're attached to. It's the feeling of happiness we're attached to. Yeah. Which is why in our meditations we like to daydream. Yeah? Because when you daydream, you know, people say, I can't visualize. You visualize very well. You know, you visualize being with the perfect partner, lying on the beach at the perfect temperature, you know, eating your chocolate that doesn't melt in your mouth or your hand. Well, maybe it melts in your mouth. But, you know, we visualize this whole thing in our meditation session, and we're just so happy, you know, and then the bell rings, and it's like, oh, I'm here. Yeah. You know, in the same way, our mind creates so much unhappiness without the presence of the object. You sit there in an entire meditation session ruminating on what someone said to you or did to you that you can't stand, and you're miserable and you're angry, and you go, oh, it's not happening. I'm here. Yeah. But it's amazing the power of the mind to create happiness and suffering in the absence of the actual object. And that's our own experience, isn't it? Okay. So what we actually need to learn to do is, instead of visualizing your boyfriend and girlfriend and deriving oodles of happiness in your meditation practice from your distraction, to imagine the Buddha and think of the Buddha's qualities and let that make you feel happy and blissful. But when you say that, then people say, no, that's just fake. Yeah. But when you do it and you're daydreaming, that's real? That's not fake? Okay. So 346. Yeah. Even after a wheel-turning monarch attains governance over the whole world with its 4 continents, pleasure for him or her is still, actually the sutras say that a woman can't become a wheel-turning monarch. Well, that was in the olden days. Now maybe they can. The pleasure for him or her is still considered to be only twofold, physical and mental. A pleasurable physical sensation is just comparatively less pain. Mental pleasure, by nature and attitude, is just conceptually created. Okay, so you'll remember previously the Nagarjuna went into this big explanation about the foulness of the body to help us overcome sexual attachment. Yeah, and now he's going to go deeper into this whole subject of pain and pleasure, especially here pleasure, to demonstrate that it's not inherently existent. Yeah, to show that pleasure and pain both are empty. Okay, so here when we say happiness or pleasure, they're both translations of the Tibetan word sukha, as in sukhavati, also bliss, it could be translated. And then when we say pain or suffering, discomfort, they're all translation of dukkha. Okay, so which also means unsatisfactory. Okay, and all these things are part of the feeling aggregate. So when we talk about our 5 skandhas or 5 aggregates, first one is our body form, second one is feelings. So feelings means feelings of pleasure, pain, and neutral. It doesn't mean feelings meaning emotion. Okay? It's just feelings, pleasure, pain, and neutral. And there's 2 kinds, physical and mental. So there's physical, pleasurable, painful, and neutral feelings, and mental, pleasurable, painful, and neutral feelings. Okay? So even you're a wheel-turning king or queen, and you have governance over the 4 continents, and you're really big, still, you only have 2 kinds of pleasure, physical and mental. Yeah? So it's interesting, because in samsara, we always want the good stuff and the power and the wealth and the esteem and the perfect circumstance. And no matter whether you have that or you don't, there's still only 2 choices for pleasure, physical and mental. Interesting, isn't it? Does that kind of take the steam out of your search for happiness? Okay. And then he goes on to say a pleasurable physical sensation is just comparatively less pain. Okay. So we've talked about this before, how what we call happiness is the decrease of pain. Okay? So you're sitting here, your knees hurt, your back hurt, you want to stand up. Yeah, you're tired of sitting. When you first stand up, it's like, oh, this feels good. Yeah, we say, now I'm happy, now I have a pleasurable sensation. If that pleasure were real pleasure, genuine pleasure, then that circumstance, and if the pleasure existed in that circumstance, then the more you were standing, the happier you would feel. But the more you stand, it starts out high on the happiness thing, and then it decreases because standing becomes painful. Yeah? When you sit down again, then the pain of standing has decreased, and the pain of sitting is still small, and so we call that happiness. Okay, so the decrease in the pain of standing is called happiness. Later on, when you're miserable because of your sitting and you stand up, the decrease of the pain of sitting is called happiness. Okay? Like when you're hungry, okay? You're really hungry, it's painful. As you start eating, the pain, the painful feeling of hunger decreases. And we say, I feel happy. If it were real happiness, the more we ate, the happier we would feel. But at a certain point, the more we eat, the worse we feel. So you can see that it's not the eating that is real happiness. It's the decrease of the pain of hunger that we label happiness. But it's not genuine happiness. Because if it were, it would only increase the more we did that action. Okay, you with me? Okay, so if we really look, oh, I got the hiccups again. I only get hiccups when I'm teaching. If something were really inherently pleasurable, then it would always be. So if we look at every single pleasurable experience we've ever had and ask yourself, could I keep doing this, the activity, whatever it is, 24/7 without a break? Would that continue to be happiness? Okay, so if you continue eating 24/7, if eating were really happiness, it should bring you more happiness. It doesn't. Okay, sex. You're having sex 24/7. Yeah, is that going to bring you real happiness? You're going to be exhausted, like, let me rest, Okay, so anything, even you're having this fantastic discussion with somebody who understands you and praises you and, and you say they're this wonderful. Is talking to that person nonstop, even for 24 hours, is that going to increase your happiness? After a while of talking to them, it's like, can we take a break? I have to go pee. It's like it ceases to be happiness, doesn't it? Okay? So a pleasurable physical sensation is just comparatively less pain. A mental pleasure, by nature and attitude, is just conceptually created. Now that one we have to look at more. Okay, mental pleasure is, when it says by nature and attitude, so mental pleasure is a thought. Mental pleasure is a pleasurable thought. Okay, so it's conceptually created. Yeah, maybe we had some experience and we say to ourselves, that was pleasurable, that was happiness. Then we have mental pleasure because we labeled that experience happiness. That experience is no longer happening, even if it just happened 2 seconds ago. But the mental happiness is coming due to our thought. It's the thought of pleasure, the thought of happiness. Very interesting to observe this, yeah? And to watch how we label some, a situation pleasurable or not. Because let's say you're having a good discussion with somebody, and somebody you feel very happy because that person is understanding you. Okay, we've all had that, right? You feel very happy when you feel heard. Okay, so what is feeling heard? Is that physical or mental? Well, somebody said some words, but the words aren't feeling heard. The words are just the word, the sounds. So feeling heard is a mental idea, isn't it? Yeah. Oh, I feel heard. They understand me. And then we feel very happy. Yeah. Or I don't feel heard. They don't understand me. And we feel miserable. Okay? So do you get how this is conceptually created? How our mind is involved? What the thought is? It's interesting when you really analyze this, which we're not used to doing, and which is why at the beginning it seems so puzzling to try and understand this. Even understanding the physical happiness is a decrease in pain. It's like, huh? That doesn't seem right. But, so you have to do the analysis repeatedly, and then, well, yeah, it is like that. Physical happiness is just because the misery of the painful thing went down. Yeah. Because if it were real happiness, the more I did the activity, the happier I'd feel. But I don't. Then mental happiness. Yeah, what is mental happiness? It's a thought, isn't it? Like you say, I feel understood. I feel loved. I feel valued. I feel appreciated. Where do all those things exist? Yeah? Where does feeling valued, appreciated, loved, where do those things exist? They're not physical things, are they? They're not the words that the person said to us. It's the thought we have. It's the thought we have. Now it becomes really interesting. Even though rejected is not a feeling, yeah, rejected, we say I feel rejected. Actually, rejected is what we think the other person's doing. It's not a feeling. But anyway, we say I feel rejected. Okay, we really mean I feel pain. Because you rejected me, you idiot. But okay, we say we feel rejected. We all know what people mean when they say that. Where is feeling rejected? What is feeling rejected? Where is it? Can you draw a line around it? Can you produce it? Can you show it? What is feeling rejected? Well, you have to have had it happen to you, and then you understand. Words can't convey my misery. Well, that might be true, but still, where is it? And what is it? Isn't feeling rejected just a thought? And it's a thought that is imputing a motivation on somebody else. Yeah, they rejected me. So we impute the motivation. They rejected me. They intended to reject me. Then we build a story. Why did they reject me? And then, there's two different plots. One is because I'm so terrible. The other one is because they're so stupid. Yeah, so you write the plot one way or the other. Some days you write it because I'm unlovable. Some days you write it because they're a jerk. Okay? Where does all of this exist? Where is all of this happening? It's just conceptual thought, isn't it? It's just conceptuality. That's all. Yeah. What is a thought? Yeah. Interesting. Sit in your meditation. What is a thought? It's just some kind of energy blip, isn't it? You can't even grab a thought.
It's also true that thoughts also affect the physical body, so that helps solidify.
Yeah. Thoughts will affect our physical body. So then, thoughts are real. Yeah. Right. And that's what I'm exaggerating in what I'm saying. Yeah, we get fooled completely. So very interesting. Yeah. So some days you're in good moods and some days you're in bad moods. And where is your mood? What is your mood? Yeah, quite interesting when we really look. Really fascinating. Okay. Pardon? Is the body a thought? Sometimes it seems like the body is merely a thought. Yeah. It's interesting when you really get into the body exists by being merely labeled. Sometimes you can get that feeling like my body is basically a thought. There's all these different parts put together, or all these different physical sensations put together, and then we say, body. Yeah? But what really is the body? Difficult to find. Yeah? When you're using ultimate analysis. Yeah. When you're using conventional analysis, body's right here. But when you're saying what really is the body,
Just a little bit back to your motivation and your question if just, those intellectuals, educated people who drive away and have all these thoughts and such. And there's this different kind of education that we receive now that's not holistic, what they call it. It doesn't imply the body or the environment necessarily. So people at university or such, they don't go out necessarily. Let's say they study agriculture, but not everybody goes actually on the farm and learns what to do. So, and then of course they question what actually they want to do and have all those thoughts because they are not
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's not directly, but I wanted to mention it in the
Yeah,
moment.
yeah, yeah. Which is why it's so important to do the dishes and vacuum the floor and go to the forest. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so mental pleasure by nature and attitude. Yeah. So there's the appearance of pleasure in the mind, and then we think this is real happiness. Okay, then 348. Since it is just comparatively less pain, or merely conceptually created, all pleasure in the world is ultimately not really pleasure. What a letdown. Yeah? We've been living our whole life like this is real pleasure. And Nagarjuna is saying that physical pleasure is just comparatively less pain. And mental pleasure is just created by your mind. So what is real pleasure anyway? What is real happiness anyway? In this world governed by ignorance. Okay? So, in actual fact, both physical and mental pleasure exist by being merely imputed by conception. Yeah. So they're not real happiness. So this does not mean that we are without any conventional pleasure or happiness. We don't go around saying, I'm suffering, I'm miserable, all day, do we? You know, when people say they're happy, we understand that in the context of here are samsaric beings who are having a decrease of pain and so physically feel happy, or their mind is in having a good thought, so they feel mental happiness. We understand what people are talking about. Okay. The computer jumped around here. Oops. Okay. So, because of this, all the happiness in cyclic existence is not actual happiness, because it's dependent on different causes and conditions, and it's designated or imputed on the basis of a decrease of pain. Okay? But, so, they're not real happiness. But what's interesting is to have what we call happiness in samsara, we have to work very hard to get it. We have to do different things to be happy. If we did just nothing, then what would happen? If you did nothing, would your body generate feelings of pain or feelings of pleasure? If you could just sit here and not move, what's going to happen? Pain. Okay? So pain comes without our exerting any effort in samsara. Yet pleasure comes after exerting a lot of effort. Okay? Yeah. Even, I think, mentally, if you're a really excellent Dharma practitioner, then you could keep your mind happy just sitting here for a long time doing nothing. But most living beings, unless they had something to entertain their mind with, then the mind suffers a lot. Yeah, they're beginning to see this now in talking about solitary confinement in prison and how harmful and damaging that is to people. And in fact, one of the inmates that I write to was telling me that people who have very long sentences, maybe they're young and they do something and they have a really long sentence, like 100 years with the possibility of parole after 90 years, something like that. That when these people are in general population, so when they can be around other people and watch TV and go out on the yard, they're okay. But when they're alone, they just think about, my whole life is going to be here in prison. And, they they get so angry, so unhappy, really miserable, And I think that's why that kind of solitary, some people, they go insane from it. Yeah? Because they don't know how to manage their mind, because the mind, being an ignorant mind, creates drama and a lot of suffering. Okay. So it's really good to look at our own experience and make many examples of this kind of thing. Yeah, especially, because it's our attachment to pleasure and happiness that motivates so much of what we do and so much of what we seek. To look at the times when we were really happy in the past and ask ourselves, what were the causes of those situations? And we might be able to pick out some causes in the environment, certain people and certain things. Yeah. But, because it's something that's caused, it's the diminishment of pain, and it's not going to be a lasting happiness at all. Okay. And so then the question comes, well, what is real happiness? Real happiness meaning genuine happiness, not inherently existent happiness. And then you realize that in order to have genuine happiness, we have to free ourselves from ignorance. Yeah? Because as long as we're under the control of ignorance, we're going to create the karma that causes physical pain, the alleviation of which is going to be physical happiness. And because we're under the influence of ignorance, our mind is going to create scenarios that are going to make us quite miserable. Yeah? Because we can daydream, in your meditation you daydream and you create this whole beautiful situation and you're so happy in your daydream. And then another thought comes in, what if this person leaves me? And then all of a sudden your whole daydream is like, blah, and you're miserable. Yeah, the bell hasn't rung yet. Yeah. And all of a sudden you're miserable because of a different thought. Yeah, it's all created by the mind of ignorance. Okay, now let's see. Do you have questions or comments? Because it's going to shift slightly here. Yeah.
So the genuine happiness that comes from freeing ourselves from ignorance, is it still going to have qualities of physicality and still be imputed by mind? I understand what the difference between genuine happiness and samsaric happiness.
Mm.
Basis for it.
Yeah. Well, when you think that a Buddha has a body that is the manifestation of the wisdom of bliss and emptiness. Yeah. So there's physicality in that sense, but it's a very subtle type of physicality. You know, that's where you get into the extremely subtle wind. That's one nature with the extremely subtle mind.
So this is a pure feeling aggregate?
Well,
Or Buddha? 'Cause I'm trying to understand.
the Buddha has 5 aggregates, okay, but the Buddha's feeling aggregate does not have pain. Yeah, does not have painful feelings. Why? Because the Buddha's no longer under the influence of ignorance and doesn't create the karma to take a body like this that by its very nature is subject to aging, sickness, and death.
And where the pleasure comes from temporary alleviation of that pain.
Right.
That polluted body.
Right.
So the basis of their happiness and pleasure is not what it's alleviation of no pain because there isn't any.
But there's not this kind of body
Right.
which by its nature brings suffering, and there's not this kind of mind which by its nature brings suffering.
I guess it's just totally redefining the causes for joy and pleasure in a Buddha's mind. It's just not.
It's not coming from outside.
Right. I can't
It's-
rock it. It's going to be a mental state. It'll be a mental state. It'll be a physical state as well, but different. That's
Well, no, I mean, it's hard for me to describe because I'm not a Buddha. But, you know, the Buddha doesn't have this body. Okay, so imagine you don't have this body. Yeah? You don't have this body. Isn't just not having this body already going to be a great relief? Okay? If you had a body that was the manifestation of your wisdom, okay, wouldn't that be rather blissful? Yeah? Yeah, it's inconceivable. But, you know, so is a hell being's body inconceivable. Yeah, but still you can conceive a little bit.
I'm just trying to grasp what that would have to be, what we're going for.
Yeah.
Because this happiness doesn't work, so then what kind of happiness is actually going to come with awakening?
Yeah.
I know, but that to me is just like, you know.
But the happiness of the Buddha is not the happiness of the Buddha.
Right.
The what?
The happiness of the Buddha is not the happiness that we want.
Right, it's a completely different kind of happiness. So it's hard for us to imagine.
Well, I just imagine sometimes when, there's an aha moment in the mind, things happen in the meditation, like
Mhm.
feeling how it opens up. Freeing.
Yeah.
Imagine there's nothing, it's just free.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, that gives us some feel, when we're not internally constricted like this and there's space inside of our hearts, just that already. Yeah.
What our daily practice is all about.
What?
It's what our daily practice is all about.
Yeah. Yeah. Trying to bring us some little imaginary glimpse of another kind of happiness. Yeah. That is multifaceted. So it's not like your daily practice is just imagining being happy. We have to create the causes for that. Mm-hmm.
Someone asked, kind of
Well, what do you think? Yeah, can a thought reflect, can a thought reflect reality? What kind of reality? We've been studying the two truths. What kind of reality is the thought going to reflect? Are you thinking there's an objective reality out there? Yeah? That there's a thought cannot reflect an objective external reality that's inherently existent because such a thing doesn't exist. Can a thought be used to communicate with others and reflect commonly labeled objects? Sure. If I say, please fill this with water, you understand, and I understand. Okay? Does the water exist in the way we think it exists? No. But can we communicate about filling the thermos with water? Yes. Uh-huh.
I think I read that the Dalai Lama defined happiness as a mind that is calm, that is stable.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
Yeah, definitely calmness is one aspect of happiness. Definitely, yeah. I think the kind of calm that a Buddha has is unimaginable to us. Yeah, because when we think of calm, when are we the calmest? Usually when we're sleeping. Okay? We can't even enjoy the calm because we're asleep. Yeah? A Buddha's wide awake and has a calm mind. Yeah? I think a Buddha's experience of happiness is much more than just calm, because we can feel a lot of calm and serenity by developing the higher states of meditation, different levels of deep concentration. They say that it brings a lot of calm and bliss, but I think what the Buddha experiences is even beyond that. Well, it must be beyond that. Okay. Okay, the next section, I don't want to start it because it's going to take a while to kind of explain the things, so if there's any more questions, we'll do them, otherwise we'll just stop. At 3, yeah, we'll start at 3:49 next time. Yeah, which is moving into this, it's a refutation that mental pleasure is real. Yeah. And he's bringing out all the things that we think is pleasurable. Continents, countries, places, houses, conveyances, seats, clothing, beds, food, drink, elephants, horses, and women. Okay. So continents, I don't know if that's going to bring you so much pleasure. Maybe if you're a big political leader. But we could write our own list, of these. Okay. Getting my way. I mean, here it's listing physical things, but, a bright red sports car. Yeah, milk chocolate that hasn't been sitting in the cold all winter and gotten all white and dry. If chocolate is left in the cold, it gets, it's not so good. Yeah. So we can develop our own little list here of things that we think are going to bring us pleasure.
There's another question online. Someone asked, how do we start to be less entangled in chasing pleasure, starting to be more comfortable with being uncomfortable?
Stopping to chase pleasure doesn't mean you're going to be more uncomfortable. I think if we stop chasing pleasure, we're going to be more peaceful and we'll be more comfortable inside. Yeah. How do we stop doing it? We start looking at the disadvantages of chasing pleasure, and we see that pleasure is unreal. I mean, that's why is Nagarjuna teaching this? So that we begin to see that what we're chasing is unreal, and then we stop chasing it, and then we experience at least some peace in our mind. You know, how do we stop being so uncomfortable with being uncomfortable? You know, by stopping paying so much attention to, our self-centered mind. Yeah. I was thinking about that when we were doing Tara Puja this morning, because I had a kink in my leg, and so when I was bowing, my leg was hurting, and I thought, oh, I could stop bowing and going, oh, my leg hurts, I can't prostrate, but it's not going to stop hurting by doing that. And I kept bowing, and I just totally forgot about it. Every once in a while I'd remember it was hurting, but then it just, I forgot about it. So you really have to concentrate hard to stay on pain for a long time. Yeah?